Hello and welcome to another video. In this one we're going to talk about the possible transition from 12 versus 12 to 8 versus 8 in Quickplay. This was teased in the last roadmap and I talked about it in my last video that I wanted to break it off into its own video as this really needs some discussion. There's a lot of aspects of the game that will change if this goes ahead and some that you may not think of right off the top of your head because, oh, didn't realize that aspect would be affected by changing the amount of people in a match. But let's go through this. So what does this mean? We're going to have the reduction from 24 mechs in a match to 16. And that's a 33% reduction, which means less mechs, less firepower, less armor on both sides of the battlefield. But some things that it could impact that aren't related to gameplay at all are things like performance. Weaker PCs will probably have an easier time rendering out 8 versus 8 than 12 versus 12 as there's just less mechs, less stuff going on, less particle effects at any one time. So weaker PCs might see a frames per second increase and possibility with people with weaker internet or maybe better hit registration. I'm not exactly sure about that. Just simply because there's less things to keep track of at once and less bandwidth is required in order to really have the fight go on. But next thing here would be talking about game modes. Now I don't think that skirmish or assault or domination are going to change. They're primarily just skirmishing around an objective for assault and domination, and then skirmish is just skirmish. But what will change is conquest and incursion. Conquest more than incursion. So let's touch on incursion first. The only concern I have about incursion is the fact that the bases were designed to be defended from a 12-man sized force. So the amount of health they have, the amount of turrets they have was all balanced around 12 versus 12. So maybe they just need a reduction in hit points or a reorganization of where the turrets are or lowering the amount of turrets in the battlefield. Not sure exactly. That one will really need to be play tested. But one that I know for sure will change is Conquest, because you simply won't be able to break off your forces as much as you can now. So a concept that I'm also going to touch on in the future, I like to call critical mass. It's basically when you have enough battle mechs at one point that if an enemy pushes on you, you can all fire at him once and he dies. So if you have a certain amount of basically tonnage on your group and an enemy whatever comes over the hill, you all fire once, blast down his CT, and he falls over. Your team has critical mass and the opponents can't really push you without guaranteed losses. So because we're going from 12 to 8 on Conquest, you can't detach a small group of mechs to go and skirmish around and go and capture points without really affecting your critical mass as a team. Where currently we have 12, we can spare like 4 mechs in order to go run off and go capture points. Yeah, as long as we have all of our heavies and assaults and some of our mediums in one spot, that is a heavily defended spot and the enemy can't push us. But with 8, we can't do that as much because we would only have 8 and we start losing critical mass around 5 mechs, depending on their sizes, and of course. But we couldn't detach 4 mechs or 3 mechs and have them go skirmish while the rest of the team fights the team fight. It's not going to happen. So at most, we're going to have maybe 1 or 2 sort of skirmishers that are going out to capture points, or you're going to be not doing that at all. You're going to be like balling up and pushing into people because you simply can't afford having somebody go off and capture while the rest of your team actually does the fight. So Conquest will be the big changer when it comes to game modes when we go to 8 versus 8. Now for maps, some maps are going to feel much better and some are going to feel much worse. There's maps like Canyon Network, Mining Collective, HPG, these smaller maps where you've probably found this when you're playing, every single piece of cover that you can poke out from is occupied and you don't know where to go. So Canyon is a really good example of this. Every little rock has somebody behind it and they're all poking out and firing at the enemy, and then you're just behind them going, can I poke out too? Because there's just too many mechs for that map to really facilitate. There's not enough cover, there's not enough stuff for us to be doing on that map with 12 mechs. Now with 8, every piece of that sort of poking cover is going to be occupied, but there's not going to be anybody left over. So everyone's going to have their spot that they can be in, or they can be maneuvering at that time. Where maps like Alpine and Polar Highlands are going to feel desolate almost, because they're huge. They have massive areas that 12-man teams can easily maneuver in, and they work really well for 12. Take that down to 8 and it's going to be like so desolate. On Polar Highlands, it's going to be like, where is the enemy? It's going to find like harder to find them, and it's just going to be weird playing on those maps. That's all. But moving on here to in-game earnings, because you make the majority of your C-bills from destroying the enemy, from getting your kills, your kill most damage dealt, your assists, your component destructions, all that kind of stuff is going to get reduced by 33% supposedly, because we're going to go from 12 enemies to 8 enemies. So that's a third less armor, a third less assists, all that stuff. So unless they go and change the amount that each thing is worth in order to make it equal to where it is currently, I would predict that we're going to see a drop in C-bill earnings when they change to 8v8, unless they make some changes, which I assume they will. If I remember correctly, when we went originally from 8v8 to 12v12, they reduced things like kill assists and stuff like that in order to not have the income go up significantly. So that's something that I'm pretty sure that they will compensate for, but it is just a consideration that they need to do that, or 8v8 will be a negative on the earnings aspect. And then, like I said before about critical mass, where it's the amount of mechs you need in one spot in order to take out an opponent if they push you, just with one alpha strike from everyone, I have to discuss a little bit how games are going to feel under the 8v8 compared to 12v12. Because there's typically 3 stages of a MechWarrior Online fight. There's the initial skirmish, there's the line trading phase, and then there's the brawl. So right off the top of the match, your lights and mediums are going to run forward and they're going to go for like your cap points in conquest, or they're going to dive into the circle in domination, or they're going to, go for the batteries in incursion. The initial fights that happen between that time and when the assaults get to the front line is the skirmishing sort of striking phase. But once the assaults get there, it becomes the trading phase, because the light mechs now can't be running around willy-nilly. The enemy assaults are there. They have critical mass. They can kill you if you are out in front of them for too long of a time. So those light mechs and medium mechs are probably going to be falling back, or maybe trying to go and flank. They're going to be doing different things, but the initial skirmishing is over. The mechs of the line come up, and the assaults and heavies start trading firepower. Now, there could be some maneuvering here where people try to like NASCAR around, but typically they're going to be having some form of front line, and that's going to continue until one team loses their critical mass, loses that ability to completely destroy an opponent if they choose to push and they have no cover to quickly retreat into. But once one team does lose critical mass, typically a brawl occurs, because the winning team goes, hey, we have the initiative. they can't kill us if we push. Let's push. And they get in and they start taking them out in a brawl. Right now with 12 versus 12, the skirmishing happens, the mechs move up and the lines are formed, and there's trading. Trading will last longer under 12v12 compared to 8v8 because you can lose more mechs before you lose your team's critical mass. So like under 12, say you have 2 lights doing whatever they want, so you have 10 people, you can maybe lose like 4 people, 5 people before the opponents go like, yeah, we can push them. Where if you're under 8v8 and you have those 2 lights running around and you have 6, you only need to be able to lose like 2 or 3, your 2 assaults or something like that from your team. Bam, the enemy's pushing you because you don't have that firepower on the field anymore. So the trading phase under 8v8 is going to last way shorter than the trading phase under 12 versus 12. But then I think the brawl phase might take longer because when you actually do push, of course, I've seen this happen a lot where you'll have the trading phase and one team will be down like 4 mechs and then you get pushed on. With 12v12, those raw numbers of difference, the amount that the pushing team has against the defending team means that there's more 2 versus 1s occurring, and that means the defenders fall faster. So typically, once the trade is pretty much decided, one team has won the trades, the brawl goes relatively quickly. But I think under 8v8, while the trades might occur quicker and then the brawl starts earlier, I think the brawl might take longer. Because if you push in and it's, say, a 5 versus 7, you know, there's only a couple 2v1s occurring. The rest of it is 1v1s. And those take longer in order to do. So, in terms of the entire game cadence, the trading phase will be shorter, and the brawl phase will be longer, I believe. But, of course, that's just my interpretation of it. I'd love to hear your ideas on sort of my theories behind that in the comments below, because I'm always trying to make that better. But the last, but maybe not least, is the entire idea of time to kill. You know, it's something that they always want to improve. People want to be on the field fighting. They don't want to be dead. Of course, you know, they always want to be playing the game and not actually just sort of lying in a smoking pile of rubble. I'm not sure. I really don't know if this will increase time to kill. I really just have to see a test. They would have a whole bunch of numbers from the current 12 versus 12 system where they could say, you know, people died at this rate and people da-da-da-da, and they have to do the public test and see what the numbers are under 8 versus 8. I'm not sure what they would be. But I think that's going to be it for now. I don't really have a conclusion. I don't personally care if we're 12 versus 12 or 8 versus 8. They have the benefits on one side, they have benefits on the other side. I'm just really excited to see this actually be tested. But if you want to be a cynical person, the one last criticism I have about this is, where did it come from? Like, I personally don't really follow a lot of the forum stuff, but was there really an outcry for 8 versus 8? I personally haven't seen anything like that, and like, you could, if you were in a sort of really pessimistic mindset, is this an issue that they're trying to fix? Maybe Matchmaker is not really capable of putting together 12 versus 12 fairly? Is there enough population to do it? Is 8 versus 8 a stopgap? I don't know. But that's going to be it for now. Thanks for watching, and good hunting.